So can you tell me a little bit about when the fort was built and what we see now versus what was here during the Civil War?
All right, well, this fort, they began construction of this fort on December 5th, 1828, and it was never completed in its original construction. It was originally designed to be 3 stories tall, and as you can see, it's nowhere near that tall anymore. But it was designed to be 3 stories tall. They were still building it by the time the Civil War starts, so it was never completed. What had not been finished yet was it did not have all of its cannons. It was built to house 135 cannons. The quarters for the fort were not completed, but all the brickwork for the fort was completed.
So what are we seeing here in the little square area? Is that where the cannon would go then?
Yeah, where the that brownstone around that square, that is sandstone, and the opening there, that's called an embrasure. That's where the cannon is going to be firing through. The cannon, the muzzle of the cannon is going to be right up in the middle of that opening, and you're going to have a good range of fire out of those embrasures.
So what kind of things are you doing to preserve the fort?
Well, right now we're trying to stabilize the fort, and for the last year and a half we've been doing a study trying to see how the fort is moving in different weather, so we can better preserve it in the future. We'll come back in maybe 10 years or so and do another study to see how the fort has changed over the years, to try and figure out better ways to preserve it, and just simply going through and replacing the mortar that comes out between the bricks. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do right now to preserve the fort.
And what kind of cannon are we leaning against here?
Well, this cannon right here is a 15-inch Rodman cannon. This is a smoothbore cannon. These are, this one and that one right over there, those are the 2 newest cannons here in the fort. These were made in 1866, just after the end of the Civil War. Now you might be wondering, Michelle, I don't know if she said this during her talk or not, but they were using rifle cannons in the second half of the Civil War. You might be wondering why they had smoothbore cannons after the war. Well, here at coastal forts, smoothbore cannons, you can skip the projectile right along the water and hit the ship right at its waterline. You can't skip a rifle projectile along the water. So that's why these were installed in 1870, to help modernize the fort a little bit.
And how big of a shell did they shoot?
Well, the projectiles are 15 inches in diameter. They weigh between 300 and 450 pounds, depending on the type of projectile.
so Michelle, can you tell us about what we're seeing down here in the pit on the lower level of the fort?
Absolutely, I'd love to. What you're seeing down here are some of the casemates on the right face of the fort. And all of this, it was actually buried underneath the war, underneath the rubble, because the first two stories were destroyed during the Union bombardment and late in the war. It's actually 22 months that the Union bombarded Fort Sumter, the longest bombardment in modern warfare. And so what you're looking down here are, the most preserved casemates that we have, and you can also see a number of cannons inside those casemates. And they're all original cannons. They're actually, and their carriages that they're on are original carriages as well.
What is a casemate?
A casemate is the area that the cannons are in. They each have their own little section, even though the sections are open. The casemate is the covering, and it has the embrasure where the cannon shoots out of.
And how many men would it take to operate one of those cannons? One
of those cannons would take about 5 to 6 men that can, and a team that would shoot off the cannons. They could do it as fast as a minute because they practiced shooting and loading the cannon quite often. It was a very choreographed movements and things that they did, so they were able to do it very quickly and very accurately as well.
And now these cannons are pointed out in that direction. What are we looking at out there in the horizon?
Well, out there is the main shipping channel, and it's also a mile away from Fort Moultrie. So that's why these cannons were very important, because if there was any enemy ship coming through the ship channel, because this is the only way you can get into Charleston Harbor with a large boat. On the other side was a sandbar. You could really only get over there with rowboats or shallow boats. So these cannons were meant to crossfire with Fort Moultrie at any enemy ship coming in between them. Because when it was built, the cannons were only able to shoot about 1.5 miles. So, and with at most 1.5 miles. So with Fort Moultrie being a little over 1 mile away, it was perfect distance to crossfire against any kind of enemy ship.